We are ready.
All right, good evening and welcome to the January, what's the date today? I'm sorry.
14th?
Or January 14th meeting of the City of Kalamazoo Zoning Board of Appeals. A volunteer advisory board appointed by the City Commission. Tonight's meeting is being held electronically and is being streamed live on the city's Facebook page and YouTube channel. Pete, are there changes or announcements or changes to the agenda?
The first announcement is, well, I don't want to spoil your thunder. We've got our new board member. We do have some, I'll tell you what, I will let you handle that part. I'll talk about the agenda changes. The agenda changes are two in part. The first one is the 1007 East Alcott and the remaining parcels listed. There were 5 variances identified for that particular application, and variance number 2 regarding the sidewalk along Bryant Street has been removed. There is going to be a sidewalk now along Bryant Street. And then the other change to the agenda is the second application for 2413 Parkview Avenue. That item has been pulled from the agenda. Again, that item is not being heard tonight, so if anyone is listening into this meeting and was intending to comment on that, please feel free to contact me tomorrow morning. And the best number to reach me at is my work number, 337-8806, or send me an email at eldridgep@kalamazooCity.org, and I will be glad to explain that. But in general, the actions being taken by the business owner to update the sign have been deemed to be content-based. So that means that there's image and text information being altered on the sign and not any physical element of the sign is being altered. So therefore, it's just content, and we cannot require a variance for altering the content on the sign. So that item is removed from the agenda for tonight. So those are the two changes for tonight. Thank you. Matt?
I guess I'm up.
Yeah, so anyway, and the other item, the other announcement for tonight is one of our new board members, Remy Harrington, is with us. And so this is her first official meeting on the Zoning Board of Appeals. She's been in front of the Zoning Board of Appeals, but never been behind the scenes, and now she's behind the scenes. So welcome aboard, Remy. Hopefully our chair, Matt Logger, will hop back in momentarily. Jeff, if he does not pop back in, do you need me to send you the meeting procedure? Okay.
I could probably muddle through the steps, but I don't have the language.
Okay. So bear with us for just a couple minutes here while we get this information to our vice chair. And then we will proceed with the meeting. All right. Okay, I just sent that over to you, Jeff, so you'll have that in a minute. Okay. So Chair Logger is still not able to get back in.
So we are number C.
So we need to, so first of all, we did communications and announcements, but we do need to back up to roll call because we did not do the full roll call of having each board member identify where they are participating in this meeting from. So,
Pete, could you give me the outline letter or number that you're speaking of?
this B,
B.
we're backing up to B for the roll call. So I'll go through and call each board member's name. Please respond with your, if you're in Portage or Kalamazoo, and indicate the state, Michigan. And we'll start with Ms. Vanden Hamburg.
Okay. Present, Kalamazoo, Michigan.
And Mr. Carroll.
Present, Kalamazoo.
Mr. Flaw.
Present, Portage, Michigan.
Ms. Doan.
Present, Kalamazoo.
Ms. Harrington.
Present, Kalamazoo, Michigan.
Thank you. Okay, so then we can move down to the approval of the meeting minutes. That would be item D. And Jeff, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Eldridge. I think our outline letters are different. I'm on C, but nonetheless, we will move on to accept last month's minutes. Are there any changes to the minutes? Do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
I make a motion to approve last month's minutes.
Ms. Doan makes a motion. Do I have a second?
I second that.
Thank you. Is there any discussion? All right, we'll take a voice vote. All in favor of approving the minutes signified by saying aye.
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 Those opposed, the same.
Aye.
There's no opposition. The minutes have been approved. I will now explain our procedure for tonight's public hearing. For each request, the secretary will read the application into the public record. The applicant or representative will then have 10 minutes to provide their comments. Following that, public comments received via phone will be aired for the panelist and audience. After this, we will close the public hearing on the request. Once the public hearing is closed, the board will then conduct what is called a finding of fact, where the board states what they feel are the facts of the request. The board must approve the finding of fact. The finding of fact. Therefore, the first vote you hear is not a ruling on the request, but the finding of fact. Then the board discusses the request in order to determine a ruling. The board reserves the privilege to ask questions of persons who have already spoken, even though the public comment portion will have been closed. Once discussion is ended, the board will move on to a roll call vote. The full board consists of 6 board members, with 4 votes required to grant a non-use variance, or it probably should say dimensional variance. The board secretary, Secretary Doan, will now read the first application into the record.
Certainly. One moment. An application for a variance for provisions of the zoning ordinance has been filed with the Zoning Board of Appeals by Kalamazoo Department of Public Safety. The request concerns the properties at 1007, 1015, and 1019 East Alcott Street, and 1000, 1014, 1022, 1026, 106 Bryant Street, which are situated in Zone RS5 Residential Single Dwelling District. The applicant is requesting the following: a dimensional variance from Chapter 5, Section 5.3 D5 to omits a canopy eave or architectural feature within 9.5 feet of the front property line on the long side of a corner lot. To clarify, the required building setback on the long side of this corner lot on Bryant Street in Zone RS5 is 12.5 feet, and the canopy proposed may extend 2.5 feet into the required setback, resulting in a building setback of 9.5 feet. Second one, additional variance from Chapter 6, Section 6.2 E to authorize 2 trees for the required landscaping for front yard setbacks without ordinance requires 7 trees. Next one, a dimensional variance from Chapter 6, Section 6.2 F to authorize a reduction in landscaping for required building perimeter landscaping along Bryant Street from 23 to 6 shrubs and no landscaping on East Alcott Street where 20 shrubs are required. Last one, a dimensional variance from Chapter 6, Section 6.2 G to authorize 4 trees for required parking lot landscaping along Bryant Street where the zoning ordinance requirement is 11 trees. Please note this will not change the zoning classification of the property. This is a request only for the variance regarding the items described above.
Thank you, Secretary Doan. Mr. Eldridge, she cut out there on the first one. Is that okay, or do I need to reread it, or can the public or others read it somewhere else, or do you care?
I'm sorry, would you please repeat that?
She cut out on number 1. I didn't know if that was a concern of anybody. You want me to reread it?
Let's, yeah, we can have Christina just reread that one.
Thank you.
Christina, would you please reread number 1?
Of course. To repeat, the first variance request is a dimensional variance from Chapter 5, Section 5.3 D5 to authorize a zero building setback where the zoning ordinance permits a canopy, eave, or architectural feature within 9.5 feet of the front property line on the long side of a corner lot. To clarify, the required building setback on the long side of this corner lot on Bryant Street is Zone RS5. In Zone RS5 is 12.5 feet, and the canopy proposed may extend 2.5 feet into the required setback, resulting in a building setback of 9.5 feet.
Thank you, Secretary Doan. I think the public, if they're detail oriented, appreciates that as well. Applicant, Mr. Vente, could you explain your request?
Yes, absolutely. Good evening. This is Jason Vetney. I am the architect with DLZ, assisting the Department of Public Safety with the development of New Station 2 at the intersections of Bryant, Race, and Alcott Street. As outlined in those in the variance description, there's essentially boils down to 2 components. One component is the construction of a canopy over the parking area on the north side of the facility along Bryant Street. The canopy would be built up to the property line to cover the first responder parking along that north edge. So that's one piece. And then the other piece essentially relates to a reduction in the number of trees required along Race and Bryant Street in particular to promote visibility for apparatus for vehicles, for trucks coming into and exiting the facility.
All right.
And I'd be happy to go into that in any more detail as you'd like.
All right. Let me see here. So now we open the public hearing phase.
I'm sorry, do we want to have Mr. Vetney bring up that layout and identify where the canopy is and kind of go through the tree and shrub situation for the various frontages? I think that would be helpful just so
Sure.
everybody can get a visual of what the variances are for and what remaining landscaping is there to really address the aesthetic concerns.
Yes, please. Are you able to share your screen?
Yeah, I was earlier. I can't tell if it is currently working. I think it was paused during the introduction, and you guys can see? Okay, great. So as you can see here, the proposed development spans the block between Bryant and Alcott along Race Street, along the west end of the block. So the new public safety station and site development will essentially occupy that west end. And so there are two components essentially to the variance. One relates to the setback. The canopy will be here along the north end of the building, up to the property line. This black dashed line there is the property line. And that canopy, that proposed canopy, is intended to cover the sidewalk and essentially half of the parking space of first responder parking off of Bryant Street. So the first variance request relates to building within that setback as described earlier. The second piece of the variance request is essentially limiting the number of trees along Race and Bryant Street. And again, that's to promote visibility coming in and out of the facility. Along Race Street, I believe the ordinance would require 7 trees, and we are requesting to provide 2 on the southwest corner, and then 4 along the east side of Bryant Street, and in lieu of 11, I believe that would be required under the ordinance.
Mr. Vice Chair, may I jump in for just a minute? So as Mr. Vetney has laid out for the Race Street frontage, it is the variance from just the tree plantings because of the visual concerns and the fact that there's both a street intersection to the south and a street intersection to the north of where the fire apparatus will be coming out of the building. However, they are planting all the required shrubs along that street frontage. So I just wanted to note that. Thank you.
That is correct. Yep.
Thank you. Mr. Eldridge, is it appropriate to open the public comments now?
Yes.
We're having the same problem, Pete. So do I ask you, or is there somebody else moderating the public lines? The phone line?
IT will respond here momentarily.
Thank you.
No public comments at this time.
Thank you very much. Is this the appropriate time to note the one letter email of support from the president of the Millwood Neighborhood Association?
Yes, it is.
So the record can reflect that. Thank you. And do the board, I'm struggling here a little bit, folks. Thank you though for your patience. The board, is there any further discussion we need on this request before we move to a finding of fact? Hearing none.
Well, or is there any questions from the board for the applicant about any of the 4 variances?
Thank you. All right. Hearing none. Could I get a motion for the finding of fact?
Mr. Vice Chair, why don't I, since we don't have any questions, why don't I go with the staff comments and then we'll move into the finding of fact. And you're doing a great job. I feel very bad, throwing this on you at short notice.
No worries.
And I haven't even gotten a text response from Chair Logger yet. But I'll just roll through the staff comments briefly here, and then we would do the next phase, which would be the finding of fact reading. So obviously, this project has been in the works for some time, as we laid out in the staff report. There has been a lot of iterations of this project that were done. There has been some challenges with the topography of the site. It's roughly an 8 to 9 foot grade difference from north to south on the site. So when you look at those elevation views, that were put together, you can kind of see the sloping of the land. And with that being said, they've laid out a site that is most appropriate for the type of use, with the need for the first responder parking along Bryant Street for easy ingress and egress of the emergency vehicles going out from there. And then they've got a separate entrance or exit rather off of Ray Street for the fire apparatus. The public parking lot is separated and only accessible from Alcott Street, so there isn't any cross traffic with the staff parking, with the public safety vehicles coming and going. So those are all on the north side of the site. The public parking is on the south side of the site. And the community room or multi-purpose room that's in the building that can be used for community meetings is on the southwest corner of the building, closest to where that public parking is, just to kind of relate why the public parking, the other reason why it's down to the south. So the first variance has to deal with the setback for the canopy. And what should be noted here is that the building itself is set back, 20 feet from the property line. And so the building itself is compliant with the required building setbacks. It's simply the awning that is cantilevered out that extends out to the property line to provide shelter for those vehicles. As they will be loading and unloading gear from those vehicles, during inclement periods of time, it's very beneficial that there is some level of shelter there. So, there was a lot of thought put into, that design for easy access of those first responder vehicles getting in and out, and providing some level of shelter for moving items to and from the vehicles. The second request regarding the trees and the shrub plantings, we talked about that along Ray Street. Again, the trees are being reduced in number to 2 because of the visual situation with the 2 street corners. So they really need clear lines of sight at both north and south. The third variance regards the tree and shrub plantings on Bryant Street and Alcott. And there have been additions through our discussions over the last few weeks, that there's some shrubs that were added along the Bryant Street frontage. So there is landscaping where it's most beneficial, especially where the staff parking is further to the east. There's tree and shrub planting, so there's adequate screening for the staff parking. And there's some plantings adjacent to the stairwell on the east side of the building. And, as far as the reasoning and logic along the Alcott Street frontage, there's required screening for the parking. So there really, there's not need for additional screening up against the building. Plus, that's where the handicap ramp is, directly adjacent to the public parking. So there really is not any green space between the building and the parking lot. And those were really the gist of what I wanted to focus on, is covering the practical difficulty in developing this site and coming up with a landscape plan that is adequate, yet not a hindrance to the use of the property, being the public safety station. And you can also see that they are dealing with 3 street frontages. So, there's a lot of landscaping provisions that got heaped on this project because they've got 3 street frontages. So thank you. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask.
Thank you, Mr. Eldridge. Are there any additional questions from the board? All right, could I get a motion of the finding of fact? Who has the finding of fact?
Excuse me, I'm ready. I was thinking that there needed to be a motion for me to move forward with that.
No, you're the motion. Thank you. You're
All right.
proposing the motion. Thank you.
Okay, all right. I move that the finding of fact for location 1007, 1015, 1019 East Alcott Street and 1014, 1022, 1026, 1106 of Bryant Street shall include all information included in the notice of public hearing dated December 23rd of 2020. 74 notices of public hearing were sent and 1 response was received and are a part of the record. A public hearing was held before the board and public comments were accepted. In addition to the information and documents contained in agenda packet staff provided for this request, the Zoning Board of Appeals, we received this document tonight that Mr. Vetney presented with the blueprint layout of the parcel. The finding of facts shall include those documents just described and the facts and comments made during the public hearing, which are summarized as below. Mr. Vetney presented the blueprint, and essentially it's Bryant, Race, and Alcott Streets. They're looking for a dimensional variance for a canopy over the parking lot area for the first responders where they park and a sidewalk area. There was concern due to vision, sightline, safety issues, concerns along Race and Bryant Streets. The second variance deals with the trees, and they're looking to have two on Bryant Street, 2 trees versus the 7, and then 4 versus the 11. They are moving forward on the property. They're planting all of the required shrubs. They did receive a letter of support from the Millwood Neighborhood Association. And I will close on the finding of fact.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Secretary Doan. Sorry, I'm just trying to read here. Now we open it up for board discussion. Generally, this is where Mr. Lager does a good job of indicating why he will be for or against the proposal. Does anybody have any comments for or against,
Mr. Chair,
please?
I would like to remind the board that because we have multiple variances, we should take these one at a time. In fact, if you want to do the, brief discussion, and then, put the motion forward for the first one, and then start that process over for the second one, just so it's not all,
Yep.
the comments aren't all blending together for the 4
Yes.
requests.
Does anybody specifically have any questions or comments about variance request number 1? Not hearing any. Could I get a motion to approve the first request?
I make a motion to approve the first dimensional variance.
Do we need to read it?
Oh.
I'm just asking,
Yes, we should read that into the record.
Okay,
please.
all right. I make a motion to approve the first dimensional variance from Chapter 5, Section 5.3 D5 to authorize a zero building setback where the zoning ordinance permits a canopy, eave, or architectural feature within 9.5 feet of the front property line on the long side of a corner lot.
And that's all you need to read right there, actually.
All right.
You don't need to read the explanation part.
All right, okay.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you very much. Do I have a second?
I second.
Thank you. Is there any discussion? Secretary Doan?
I think in light of the need to protect equipment and such, I think in the light of the need to protect equipment and such that it's reasonable, and I don't think it will be a detriment to the area. So I'll be voting in favor.
I concur. Hearing no other comments, Mr. Eldridge, could I get a roll call vote on the first variance request?
You may. We'll start with Mr. Flaw,
Yes.
Vanden Hamburg,
Yes.
Doan,
Yes.
Carroll,
Yes,
Harrington.
Yes.
I think that's everybody. Your motion passes, or your request passes. Now on to the second variance request. Do I have a motion for the second request?
I make a motion to pass the dimensional variance request from Chapter 6, Section 6.2E to authorize 2 trees for the required landscaping for front yard setbacks without parking or paved areas along Ray Street where the zoning ordinance requires 7 trees.
Thank you very much. Do I have a second?
I second that motion.
And do we have any discussion,
I have a question.
please?
So it's saying that the 7 trees are required. Are the 7 trees required to align with the natural features protection? Why are there 7 trees required?
And I'll be glad to take that question. This particular property is not under the natural features protection overlay,
Okay.
but the landscaping section that's referenced there is the required landscaping for development of property. And there's tree plantings based on the street frontage, and there's also shrub plantings based on the amount of feet of street frontage. So that's where the numbers come from, why there's 7 trees, and I believe in this case it was 11 shrubs was the calculation, and they've showed the shrubs on the plan, and then they've showed the additional 2 trees, but then it's the absence of the 5 trees that they have to request this dimensional variance for.
Thank you, Pete.
I'll be voting in support of this. Seems reasonable to me. It seems like it's been thought out.
Yeah, and also just for our new board members, just for her information, during this discussion is when the board members identify any practical difficulties or hardships associated with the property or the development, that is providing that reasoning for, voting for or voting against the request.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Eldridge, for putting better into words the reason why I'll be supporting the motion. Hearing no other discussions, Mr. Eldridge, could I get a roll call vote?
We'll start with Ms. Doan,
Yes.
Flaw,
Yes.
Vanden Hamburg,
Yes.
Harrington,
Yes.
Carroll.
Yes. Your request passes. So number 1 and number 2 have been approved. The third request, Secretary Doan, could I get a reading? Or actually, I need a motion. So could I get a motion?
No problem. I make a motion to pass the dimensional variance from Chapter 6, Section 6.2F to authorize a reduction in landscaping for required building perimeter landscaping along Bryant Street from 23 to 6 shrubs, and no landscaping on East Alcott Street where 20 shrubs are required.
Very much. Do I have a second of that motion?
I second that motion.
Thank you. Having a second, we now discuss the variance. Any discussion pro or con?
There has been a public comment that just came in, and I could play that if you'd like me to.
I would, thank you.
Sure.
I'll break the silence. Did anybody else hear it?
No.
No,
Okay, we're waiting. Thank you.
all right.
I don't think I can play it until the other person stops the screen share.
Oh, Mr.
Let's,
Bettany?
Metney, could you cease sharing? Are you still there, Mr. Bedney?
Yes, I can hear you, and I did stop screen sharing a minute or two ago. It should be, I assume it's off of your screens now.
Mhm.
It's Michael Wilson from 1105 Bryant Street. There was a little cutout at the beginning of the meeting, and I missed a part about whether there was to be a sidewalk on Bryant Street or not. Just looking for some clarification. Personally, I don't think there's a need for it, as most people enjoy walking the grass for the grass sake, but it's not that big of a deal. But it just seems like it might be a added expense and upkeep in the future. And I do applaud Peter Eldridge and the chief for addressing my concerns about the fence that's going to go along Bryant Street. Thank you. And we just, all of us in the neighborhood want to preserve as much green space as possible with the rest of the block. And we hope that it's what the city ultimately decides to do. Thank you.
Thank you, staff, for playing that. Mr. Eldridge, could you put this issue in a little bit more context before we move on to?
sure, I'd be glad to do that. So Mr. Wilson is, the first item he was referring to was, it was the sidewalk, and the sidewalk is going in front of the facility right now, but it is showing right now is terminating just after the staff parking lot. So it's not extending down into the green space. So that's something for further discussion on what to do with the remaining portion of the block. The second item was the alteration of the fence detail, and that was, there's some areas that show a wrought iron fence, and Mr. Wilson had suggested that it could be made to look more like Washington Writers Academy and several other locations along Portage Street that have the brick pillars with the wrought iron fencing in between. So I guess that's, well, yes, so that has been discussed with public safety, and so there'll be some changes made to some of the fencing detail.
And just to clarify, the variance for the sidewalk has been removed from today's agenda.
And yes, that sidewalk is, it is planned to go in.
Very good. I thank the caller and Mr. Eldridge and staff. So we were at the point of, could the secretary remind me if we've had a motion for the third variance, or we need to have
Yes,
a motion?
that was the one involving the perimeter landscaping along Bryant Street and East Alcott Street.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
I second that.
Thank you very much. And now for discussion. I think, I know I'll be in favor here also for the practical hardships that the property experiences. Will be the reason I'll be voting in favor. Anybody
I
else?
concur.
Thank you. All right, hearing no other discussions, Mr. Eldridge, can I get a roll call vote on the third request?
We'll start with Mr. Flaw,
Yes.
Doan,
Yes,
Vanden Hamburg,
Yes.
Harrington,
Yes.
Carroll.
Yes. Your request, your motion and request pass. Moving on to the fourth and final variance request for this applicant, Ms. Doan.
yes. I make a motion to pass a dimensional variance from Chapter 6, Section 6.2G to authorize 4 trees for required parking lot landscaping along Bryant Street where the zoning ordinance requirement is 11 trees.
Thank you very much. Do I have a second?
I second that motion.
Thank you. Any discussion?
We do have another message that just came in if you'd like to hear it.
Most welcome. Thank you.
Mhm.
I please hope that you guys didn't decide to put a curbside sidewalk along Bryant Street. This was discussed before, and I didn't even think it was an option. This was supposed to be a variance, and now it's not. I don't understand what's going on, because a curbside sidewalk wasn't in the discussion at all that we've been having for a couple of years.
Duly noted. Did we get the name and address of the individual?
I think just a number.
Thank you. If that could be part of the record if necessary.
Sure.
Mr. Eldridge, do we need to address that in any way?
No, we'll just leave that in the record, and I'll make sure to get that phone number from IT to contact that individual to talk to him about, the revised plan.
Thank you. So we do have a second on the motion for the fourth variance. I have not heard any comment. I will be supportive, again, because of the practical difficulties of the site. Anybody else with comment? All righty, then we'll have a roll call vote. Mr. Eldridge?
And we'll start with Ms. Doan,
Yes,
Ms. Vanden Hamburg,
Yes.
Law,
Yes.
Harrington,
Yes.
Carroll.
Sir. All righty, your motion passes. All 4 of the variance requests have been approved tonight.
Okay.
All right, the next agenda item. And searching for the agenda real quick.
Which the second agenda item has been removed.
Correct. The Kazoo Books request has been removed.
Correct.
All righty. The second item after that is other business. Mr. Eldridge, do we have other business?
And as far as other business, I just have a reminder for the board that next month is the annual meeting. So we'll be just doing a brief overview of the ZBA report from 2020, just looking at what actions were approved by the board. And then that is the meeting where we also elect officers for 2021. So we are planning on having a meeting, and that would be February 4th.
Thank you. Well, I am glad I did such a bad job, so maybe I won't get voted on as the chair. I do apologize. It is my job to be more prepared as the second in the wings. So when Chairman Lager does his deal next time, I will pay more attention and be more ready for my role. Thank you for sticking with me. I don't have any other business. Any other board members have any business? Then if hearing none, then I can adjourn this meeting at 7:45 p.m.
Thank you, Jeff.
All right.
Nice job, Vice Chair Carol. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
All
You
right.
too. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Okay. Good job, everyone.
Thanks, Pete.
Thank you. Thank you, Beth, for your efforts tonight.